What shall we dream of? I am delighted to welcome back to the stage Eloise Epstein to answer that question. Do androids dream of digital procurement? Eloise, the floor is yours.
So February 20th of this year, on a cold and rainy night in San Francisco, I experienced the future now. I took my first robo-taxi, and it was a mind-blowing experience. It's a little app. It's a ride-sharing service just like Lyft and Uber, and you select your destination, you select the time and where you want to go, and it sends an autonomous car to you. And so the car drove up, and I walked up, I opened the front door, sat down in the seat, and it looked over, and there's no driver. There's a steering wheel, there's a gear shift, looks like a normal car, but as soon as you close the door and you hit the start button, it zooms away. And you're taken into this wild experience, and it's very safe, and all the drivers around us in San Francisco were like, and I felt safer in that robo-taxi than I did in most Lyft and Ubers. And it's great because in the app, you can control the temperature, the radio. There's no awkward silence with the driver, or should I talk, should I not talk? And about halfway through the ride, I realized, oh my God, this is going to completely obliterate the gig economy. At least those on the ride sharing, Lyft and Uber, and the last mile delivery around Uber Eats, Grubhub, and all of those. And so it's just a matter of time and capacity, and we will have robo-taxis in major cities. Right now it's just in San Francisco and Phoenix, Arizona, but it's just a matter of time. The technology's there. It's just a matter of growing the capacity. If you've been following what OpenAI has been doing with Figure is the form factor that is building these robots. They're taking OpenAI intelligence and putting it into this form factor so that it can do everything from chopping vegetables to working in a warehouse or a manufacturing plant. And Tesla's doing the same thing. This is a staggering development, and it's already live today or being rolled out today. And so in the next couple of years, we're going to see entire warehouses, manufacturing floors, and you name it, that are built for these robots and others like them. Because a manufacturer, up until now, we haven't really had facilities built for robots. Because there's a difference. When you try to put humans and robots in the same place, you have to slow the robots down. But if you have a facility that's completely autonomous robots, they can move much more fast, much more efficient, and humans aren't even anywhere near. In fact, it's dangerous for humans to be there. And so this is happening now. And I know that there's a lot of hype in AI, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But this is real. This is real. This is happening. And so the quote, if you've seen this, and I was using this for quite a while, it's not the AI that'll take your job, it's the person that uses AI that will take your job. And that's true. I believe that. But it's also not true because it's not just that the AI will take your job, because eventually it will. And the nature of work, as everybody has said, I'm not the first person to say it, goodness knows I won't be the last person to say it, it's going to take more jobs than we realize, and it's going to create new ones. But we have to understand that there's a change afoot. And I have data to show this. So, and I'm going to explain this graph because there's a lot going on this. This was created by Silicon Valley Bank, so this is not my graph. But yes, that same SVB. They actually surprisingly do really good work. Just they had a bit of a risk management issue. Anyway. So in the left-hand side is e-commerce, and you can see that that's the first blue line, and it kind of peaks, and then it's done by 2005. And that's pretty much the time that Amazon flexed and said, we own e-commerce. And you can see the purple one is clean tech, and you can see what a disaster that is. The red one is crypto and Web 3.0, and that really hasn't gone anywhere. And the big blue line there is mobile technology, and you can see that's on the the decline, and that's just simply because we all have smartphones now. So there's not a ton more to invest in that. But the green one that is shaded, you can just see that it's just going up and up and up, and it's above where mobile got at its peak, and we're just getting started on this AI journey. Granted, we've been on it for a few years, but it's moving very quickly. And the VC funds, you can see the ones with AI in them, and it's a huge growth, and the one in white is crypto. So in case you were wondering, crypto is absolutely done, if we didn't need any more evidence of that. But AI funds are blowing up everywhere, and if you go to San Francisco, you don't have to believe me. Come to San Francisco, sit in a coffee shop, and you will hear people pitching or talking about AI. It is, like I said, another dot-com moment. And it's been about 2.5 decades since we had the last sort of big push on technology. But make no mistake, it may not be where you are, but there is a real conglomeration of AI tech, hardware, software, engineering, you name it, it's happening. Not just in San Francisco, but you can certainly feel it and see it there. So buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Now, that said, 84% of digital transformations fail. And I would put that number closer to 100%. I don't have data to prove that. I can prove the 84%. But notionally, I think most digital transformations fail. So then, how are we going to do AI if we can't even do digital transformations? Well, let's talk about why digital transformations fail. Number one, complexity is at the wrong place. We put too much of a burden on the end user. Two, it's IT-driven or CIO-driven, which usually means that a digital transformation is simply an ERP upgrade in disguise. And I go to great lengths in my new book to dispel the myth of the CIO, because they're pretty much irrelevant in this new age. They were irrelevant in the digital age, which was just a couple of years ago, and they are totally irrelevant in the AI age. And then people are underserved. And this is one area, and I'm going to focus on these three over the next few minutes, because this is how we're going to adopt AI in ways that we haven't before. Okay. User experience. It is the key. If I show you an Apple product, it's something you touch. We implicitly know that. It draws you in. Those of you with kids or grandkids, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, they figure it out very, very quickly. In fact, cats can figure out. I've seen plenty of cats on TikTok. I'm addicted, shamelessly, I am addicted to TikTok, and I've gone down some rabbit holes. But there are tons of videos of cats using iPads and playing games on iPads. So that's how easy it is to use an Apple product. A Google product, text box, put some information in, click the button, and magic happens. Your corporate app looks like this. Your source to pay app looks like this. And you want to know how I know, and I'm glad none of my colleagues are here because I'm going to embarrass them. A few years ago, Carney put in SAP as our financial backbone. And this is literally a screenshot, and I don't understand anything about this slide. I cannot use the tool. I have to have my EA enter anything into this. And I spend every day studying how humans use digital technology. Every day. Every interaction, where I go to the airport, I go get in a cab, whatever, I'm always watching how people use technology, and I can't figure this out. How embarrassing is that for SAP? Not for me, I'm not embarrassed. And part of this is the technology, quite literally, was developed in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they're just repackaging it under different cloud or AI or whatever. So we have to think about better user experiences. All right, speaking of complicated user experiences, this is your typical requisition process. This is why the business hates procurement. Because as a business user, I submit a request and it goes through this complicated process. And this is from one of my clients. This is not made up. It is literally this complicated. In fact, it's more complicated because there are all sorts of different systems that are notionally represented here. But when you see all the logos of where the data is going, it's crazy. And not only that, at a certain point, the case management system is not integrated with any other systems. So somebody is cutting and pasting data from one system to another, which as a digital person drives me nuts. So this is why it takes 30 days, 60 days to get a requisition done. It's why we can't give information transparency back to the user who requested it. And this stems from the idea that we had to define a process and then hard code it into the SAP or Coupa system, whatever system. That's the problem. But we are now in an era with intelligence, and I'll say it, AI systems, where you set the starting point, the end point, and the constraints, and the user in the system can figure it out. Process management is done. We don't need to do process management anymore. And let me show you an example. So here is a requisition example. And so I'm going to read the script because it's hard to see on the screen. But what I'm talking about here is that Tom says, I want a new laptop. And the system says, what brand would you like? Most users select Apple or Lenovo. And so just in that exchange, the system is nudging Tom to Apple or Lenovo. Because once the idea is planted in the brain, most humans are not going to say, oh, you know what? I'd like a Dell. Very infrequent. But if we put a constraint, we could just say, you get to choose Apple or Lenovo. And then Tom says, well, what models do we have? And the system brings back the 4 models. Now, Tom doesn't know, and Tom doesn't care that these are the 4 models that are pre-approved by IT with the supplier we want at the price we want. Tom just wants the laptop. But Tom, being a good human, says, oh, wait, can I get an iPad? And so the exchange changes, and now the system shows him the iPad models. And then he selects one of the iPads, and then it prompts him to say, most users select the keyboard and pencil. Would you like that too? So this entire exchange took less than 60 seconds. Now, in your mind, think about every requisition system you've ever seen. It is not that easy. And in fact, we make the user search and go through multiple results, oftentimes duplicate results, another thing that drives me crazy, to get to an endpoint that may actually be something that requires him to set up a new procurement request, a new PR. So it's completely backwards, and it takes anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes or longer. And just to sort of bring this home, this is what an intelligent system is. Think about Netflix. If we all have Netflix in here, Netflix didn't create 100 different processes for each one of us. It's an intelligent system, and it changes based on who we are and how we interact with it. Now, this system, this AI-driven system that I'm talking about here, this requisition example, is being built and piloted. This is not fantasy anymore. This is the future here and now. And we are starting to see this across the entire procurement value chain, whether it's running sourcing events, requisitioning, P2P or invoice automation, on and on and on. And this is happening even if we don't want to believe it, and even if we don't want to adopt it. Which leads us to an interesting dynamic, because within the next 18 months, we'll have all the technology we could possibly consume. That doesn't mean we'll stop developing technology. It just means an enterprise, arguably today, but certainly within 18 months, will not be able to consume more technology. There's just more technology than capability to adopt it. And the real problem here is apathy in Excel. And funny though that is, it's either apathy with the leadership that just acquiesces to the CIO, apathy of the middle managers that just feel like, I'm just going to play this out until I retire, I'm just going to sandbag this effort. Middle managers kill digital transformations. But also this idea of, well, I don't know, I could take 5 minutes to learn this new thing, or you know what? I'll just do it in Excel and be done and go home and play with my kids. So we have to really get past this idea that we can just do it in Excel, because eventually that is going to stop. We're going to have systems we have systems today that are far more sophisticated, which means yesterday's skills and today's skills are no longer relevant. There are entire procurement academies dedicated to these skills. But if you look closely at them, risk management, strategic sourcing, cost regression, et cetera, these are all getting automated. They're getting changed by digital, if not digital, AI, or both. In fact, I'll show you an example. There is a particular company that has completely decimated whatever training you would do on that. There's no point in training on category management processes anymore, because there's tools like this one that can just do it. So we need a different skill set, which means we move into softer skills, things that you cannot learn from a procurement academy or a learning management system. By the way, sidebar, this is something else that drives me crazy. Humans do not learn from learning management systems. So you can take every LMS that you have and you could just throw it out the window. And you delete it, whatever, stop paying, because you're not getting any value from it. And if you want more evidence, I spend a whole chapter in my new book talking about why the learning management systems are just complete and utter frauds. But these new skills get to things like a love of data. You can't teach people that. They either want to explore data, they want to understand data, or they don't. And you can screen for that in your interviews. You have to show intellectual curiosity. You have to think like the business. Everybody in procurement should be empowered to be part of the business. We are as much a part of the business as any engineer or marketer or salesperson. We have to understand that the way people learn, I made a joke, is changing. I made a joke about TikTok, but there's a reason TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, all of these visual mediums, Instagram, are so powerful because we have moved as a global society into exchanging information via visual media. So we have to understand that. And the other thing we have to do is, as we think about all these new factories and robots all over the place, we have to start thinking in network design. And everybody is going to be need some fluency in network design and network thinking. So you cannot learn these skills from any catalog or any other learning management system. These are skills you do. These are attitudinal skills. You have to want to do them. Okay, so now let's start talking about the hype. So everybody's talking about, Gen AI, blah, 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 blah. And if I see one more article on LinkedIn about how Gen AI is going to do X in procurement, sometimes I just want to throw my computer out the window when I go to LinkedIn. And so and I know I've talked about AI a lot already, I want you to know that I'm putting my money where my mouth is. So I'm not talking about it, I'm actually doing it. And so I started a new series on YouTube called Gen Xer, which I'm older, I'm a Gen Xer, versus Gen AI. And what I'm doing is I'm documenting my learning process as I go through all the different elements that I learn on Gen AI. And sometimes it's audio, sometimes it's data. There's a data analyst GPT. There's also a bunch of contract reviewer GPTs, which is staggering because my latest episode, I took 10 contracts, I threw them into the contract reviewer, and it immediately went through and analyzed all of them, told me where I had expiring contracts, where I didn't have expiration, where I didn't have auto-renew, on and on and on. I went through it, I put contracts in with pricing tables, it pulled out the differences. This took me like 30 seconds. Like, that's how quickly. And so you start to see just the power of this. Even just on a whim, I said, oh, create a new contract for X with Y, and it just spit the contract right out, which means CLMs are dead. Like I keep saying, like hear me when I say these ideas that are sacrosanct, they're going to go away very quickly. And that's the reason that I'm doing this. And I like to joke that I make myself look stupid so you don't have to. And if I'm going to repeat this a few more times, you have to do this. You can't talk about it. You can't read about it. You have to do it. And for $20 a month, you have the power of massive amounts of human knowledge, at least Western English human knowledge and capability. And you would be surprised the productivity tools that are out there, not just creating images and songs, although there is that. By the way, as I was flying here, somebody sent me a bunch of AI songs about me and my fight with SAP. So I'll post those at some point. That was pretty funny. Okay, now I talked about overhyping. So if you look at this list of all the things that quote unquote Gen AI will do, this is why I hate consultants, because this is everything that consultants talk about that Gen AI will do. And this is where we get into hype, because this is could do, would do, will do. The problem with this list, it's true, but it's at a high level. And the other problem with this is exactly what everybody said big data would do. And most of you probably remember big data. I'm not sure we ever figured out what big data is. And so it didn't solve these problems clearly. And AI won't do it on its own. We have to do the work to get into the details. So how do we apply Gen AI to procurement? We have to come back to the three questions. What are we buying? Who are we buying it from? And what are the objectives we need to keep in mind? And if you want to cut through all the noise, I'm just going to cut right to the chase. There's three areas that you'll get this. Intake or process orchestration, negotiation in marketplaces, and of course, intelligence. And what I would argue is that in the intelligence umbrella, whether it's risk, ESG, part of that is going to be category management intelligence. And that's what I would say is the next generation of category management. And so I showed you this last year just to talk about the evolution. Remember, we come from paper and CD-ROMs. We used to create category strategies on paper, put them on CDs or DVDs, and ship them all over the world. That was not that long ago, maybe a decade. I can't remember, I'm getting old. Then we moved to SharePoint and dashboards, which were equally useless, they just used less paper. And then along came Drasco, who killed category management. Or at least the old category management. Wow, that got a better laugh last year, but thank you. And I'm gonna show you something that's cheeky, but actually don't take this as the answer. But we are now moving into an AI-based category intelligence. And this is not the answer. I was being a little cheeky here. The answer is for all of us to create. This is just to set the starting point. Our job collectively over the next 2 days, over the next year, couple years, is to define what category management will be if it's enabled by AI. Because category management is the core to all products, to effectively producing and selling products. And I cannot stress this enough, that when we start to do good category management, we become part of the business and not the order taker. Okay. I'm talking a lot about AI, but I always want to leave you with a cautionary tale. And this is John McNamara. He was the American Secretary of Defense in the 60s when the US decided that it would get involved in a war in Vietnam. And you had South Vietnam, which was propped up by the US government, and you had North Vietnam that was its own determined ideology. And for some reason, we decided that this was the line that we would not allow communism to cross. And what's interesting about McNamara is he was an operations research guy. And he came from Ford, where he brought KPIs, metrics, a data analyst way of operating. It had a lot of success. If you fly into Detroit Airport, it's called McNamara Airport. So an interesting fellow. So he thought you could conduct war by metrics. Turns out he was wrong. And so for him, the progress was measured by number of people killed and amount of supplies disrupted, so trucks that got blown up. And you can see the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is in red, and that was the main supply line for the North Vietnamese to feed the South or to bring their forces down into the South. And so, like any good numbers person, the US military decided that, okay, what we're gonna do is just bomb the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And this is what it looked like. And you can see the trail, and you can see all the crater marks. And over the course of all the Vietnam War, the US dropped 5 million tons of bombs on Vietnam into jungles like this. And that doesn't count napalm and other chemical agents. 5 million tons, which I can't even put that into an analogy. It's just a lot of wasted bombs because it's not disrupting anything. But the reason I mention this is because the way we set it up is that the Army and the Air Force would drop sensors all over the Ho Chi Minh Trail because it was used predominantly at night. And they couldn't see at night very well. So he put sensors, and there were ground sensors and seismic sensors. There was even sensors to detect urine. Like, we had all these sensors and all this data coming in. And when the sensors were tripped, they would fire up these jets, and they'd bomb right where they expected the North Vietnamese to be. And you would think this is a great example of technology, and we're gonna get the kills. And what happened is you started to get numbers that's in 1966 to 1967, there's 7,100 trucks blown up, and trucks look like this on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And by 1970 to 70, a 9-month period from late 1970 to mid-1971, the number was 25,000 trucks were bombed on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Now, if that were true, now this starts to get into problems with statistics, because if that were true, then the entire Ho Chi Minh Trail would be littered with truck carcasses, which would have been impossible. And it has got to a deeper truth about all of the metrics that were being collected. What turns out is both the number of enemy killed and the trucks bombed were being double counted or inflated, or in some cases just made up. Which, interestingly, these are numbers, or these are words that are used to describe procurement savings. So just sidebar on that. So think about that. When people don't believe us on what we do, keep that in mind. And so there's two explanations for this. Either we did not actually bomb 25,000 trucks, and somebody may have double counted or lied outright, or there's a monster roaming the jungles of Vietnam known as the Great Laotian Truck Monster that would eat these carcasses before daylight, and nobody could find them. So you get to decide which one it was. But this is a caution. No matter how much technology you have, the United States had a lot of hubris and a lot of ego around technology determinism. They thought we could bomb our way to success. We thought we could measure our way to success, and it turns out it didn't work out that way. So use this as a cautionary tale. No matter how much technology you have, there are going to be flaws, and we need to design it right. So to close, for next generation category management, you have the expertise. Everybody in this room has the expertise. You have the tools. What are you going to do with it? And I implore you to do something. Get started, take a journey, learn something, try AI, take a robo-taxi, do whatever. But we have to stop talking about it and start doing it. Thank you.